Hey, Coach. My name is Mandy Green, for those of you that don't know me. Today, what I want to talk about is how to be great at recruiting, even during your busy season. Now, I put great in red because most coaches, with how they work, I would say they fail to recruit during their busy season, not because they don't have good strategies, not because they don't have good ideas, or not because they're not working hard enough, but often I find they're not hitting their goals because they're working on the wrong things, or they're implementing systems in the wrong order. They're winging it. The chaos of coaching sucks them into the chaos and the overwhelm. And so the goal of, for me, for you, for this webinar is to help reduce that. I don't know that I can completely eliminate it. You're a college coach. You're working with 18 to 22-year-olds and with this NIL stuff, right? Things are crazy, but and this isn't stuff meant to, right? I can't overcome your facilities. I can't overcome your location. I can't overcome, you know, the budget and how much recruiting money you have, all the stuff and the cost of the school. I can't overcome that. What I'm here to do with this is to show you how your working is making a big impact in how great you're actually being as a recruiter. So that's the goal of this. So many of the clients. So, just so you know, if you didn't know me, I have been a college soccer coach, mostly at the Division One level for 24-ish years. For the last 8 years, I've been Dan Tudor's vice president, where I work with coaches one-on-one with all things recruiting, getting responses up, moving them along in the process through great recruiting strategies, communication strategies. And then I also have my company Busy Coach, where what I'm doing is this type of stuff. I mean, certainly you need to be able to communicate and you need to be able to lead and guide and sell recruits on your school. But where I find coaches lose recruits a lot is due to self-inflicted wounds because of a few things. I feel like a lot of the clients I get to work with are working incredibly hard, but they're too focused on effort and efficiency and not enough on effectiveness. So let's talk about the difference because effort and efficiency are highly related, but distinctly different. So effort is working hard. You're giving it your all and you're trying your best. You wouldn't be here if you didn't already put in a ton of effort. But as you've realized, probably effort alone is not going to get the job done. And that's probably why you're here listening to this webinar, right? And despite your best efforts, you're not getting where you want to be, or maybe you're just getting there much slower than you want. I know coaches, we're competitive and we're very impatient. I get that. Efficiency is doing your job well, optimizing your day-to-day workflow so that you can get a lot done with your available resources, which I'm all about that. But here's an analogy that I want to use. Efficiency is like being a great sailor, knowing how to trim the sails, adjust the rudder, and find the most favorable winds, right, to maximize your speed through water. In other words, if effort is working hard at operating your boat, efficiency is knowing how to operate it, right? Effectiveness, on the other hand, is about doing the right things. Uh, Effectiveness doesn't care how hard you work or it doesn't care how efficient you are at working. It's completely focused on whether you're doing the right things. So using my sailing analogy, right? If effort is about working hard and efficiency is about operating the sailboat, effectiveness is about making sure the boat is pointed in the right direction. So don't get me wrong, all of these concepts are important to accomplishing what we're trying to work towards. But if I had to choose, I would always choose effectiveness before efficiency and effort because you could be the world's most efficient sailor and you could be trying really hard. But if you're sailing the boat in the wrong direction, you're doomed. And even an amateur sailor could make it to their destination as long as they keep the boat pointed in the right direction. So think about this with recruiting. Have you ever worked yourself to the bone only to look up a year later at the end of the year and realize that you were much further away from your recruiting goals, or you hit your goals, but you were completely exhausted and you're not living the life you want to be living because you're working 24/7. To me, that is effort and efficiency without effectiveness. You're efficiently moving yourself in the wrong direction, and the chaos of coaching life has a way of doing that, doesn't it? Pulling you into effort and efficiency and away from effectiveness. So, again, the goal of this is to escape this trap. When I was recruiting, the wrong approach I was taking. I was treating every recruit the same. I was customizing versus automating everything. I was in my email 100, all day, every day. I was random and not consistent. I was fitting recruiting in. I wasn't strategic and intentional about how I showed up every day. I had no plan. I wasn't delegating. I was overwhelmed. And when I was overwhelmed, I did nothing, or I started with easy things. I was doing things on the fly, and I was giving myself all day to do all of the things, and there was no urgency to what I was doing. Again, I was putting in a lot of effort, and I was optimizing some of the efficiency part of it, but I wasn't being effective. And so I was going in the wrong direction, working really hard, going in the wrong direction. Not good. The thing that changed for me, and what I want to introduce and get you thinking about differently through this webinar, is I want you to ask yourself this question. I don't know if you've ever read the book, The One Thing, or if you know who Tim Ferriss is. But Tim Ferriss asks this question over and over. And it's a question, it's his number one prioritization question to determine which priorities or projects to work on. I started asking myself this question. Okay, so I'm doing all of these things and I'm busy, but I'm not really getting anywhere. I took a step back and I asked, what is the one thing that if I focused on is going to solve everything that I'm trying to accomplish? Instead of doing a million things, going a mile wide and an inch deep, how about I find one thing that allows me to go a mile deep and an inch wide and be way more effective and become a much better recruiter than I was being? The answer that I came up with at the time was I changed my goal, my first goal, my target, right? The one target that we need to keep us on focus and on track and tell us if we're doing the right things or the wrong things and help us determine what ends up on our to-do list, right? The goal. So again, going back to this question, the thing I changed about my goal was get a commitment on or shortly after the visit. So what's one thing that solves a lot of other things? My problem was I was allowing recruiting to take all year. I was falling behind all of the other coaches that was recruiting against. I would show up and just again be random. And so I wasn't leading and moving recruits along in the process. I didn't have a plan for the questions I was asking. I was hit or miss and inconsistent with my communication. It was a mess. But when I changed it to that, what I found was it was a much shorter timeline. I'm a big believer in work expands to the time you give it. I gave myself a shorter timeline, but because, all my visits typically were at the end of recruits' junior years over the summer, or early the fall of their senior year, it gave me with that much smaller window, I had to do different things. It changed my to-do list. It forced me to think differently and do differently and focus on, if I'm going to get to that goal, how do I be effective with this? What are the key tasks I need to do to get me to that? Like I said, it changed my to-do list. I stopped. I found it was more impactful for me to go to ID camps than it was going to recruit at all these tournaments every single weekend, right? I started getting, just there were a million things that I did that I was doing. I narrowed it down to a few key things. It was more effective. I got efficient. And because of it, I had to actually put in less effort to get more out of it. You know what I'm saying? What would that be for you? Okay, so effectiveness. And then This is what I was doing. Effort first, efficiency second, effectiveness is an afterthought. But when I flipped it by establishing a different goal, effectiveness came first. And then I got efficient. And I mean, effort is needed. I still worked hard, don't get me wrong, but I didn't need to work 24/7 to get better results. It was amazing. Now, efficiency, right? You got to have effectiveness, but then we got to be efficient doing it. Think there's so many things you do every year as a college coach that are repetitive. It's like the movie Groundhog's Day, right? Every year it's the same thing. I was not reaching my potential as a recruiter because I was individually doing everything. I was customizing everything for every person. I was working off the top of my, just in my head, and everything was random. I figured out what are the repeatable things that I can solve once, do it really well once, and then put the solution on autopilot. I'm going to give you throughout the rest of this different examples of different things that I did, but automating yourself was probably the hardest thing. Templates. How many repeat emails do you send every single year? If it is something, I want you to change your mindset. If this is something you could do, you're going to use more than once, let's save it as a template. How many repeatable tasks do you do? All I'm asking you to do is create checklists, right? Technology. Where could you use technology to automate some of the things that you have to do just to make your job easier? Your job is hard enough as it is. There are key things. Now, do these things take work to set up? Yep. But these key things can make your job so much easier. It can improve the speed that you get things done. It can improve the quality. You're going to eliminate mistakes. You can now train and delegate things to assistants more confidently. You can start pinpointing what's working, what's not working. How do we fix it? There's so many things that happen from this. Okay, so what I'm going to show you, effectiveness first, efficiency second, and you're not going to have to put in as much effort towards recruiting. Okay, again, I'm saying you still got to work hard and you still got to do the right things at the right time, right? And have the right strategies in place. But I'm telling you, you can get there faster and easier when you put the first two things in place. Okay, I love this quote. You can't build a reputation on what you're going to do. Okay. In the end, I would say a lot of the coaches and entrepreneurs that I study, they don't necessarily have better ideas than their competition. I think what sets them apart from others is that they execute more effectively. They're more disciplined and they're more consistent with their execution. Okay. It's not what you know, it's not who you know, but it's what you implement that gets you the results. Okay. The whole concept, all of this automation, and what's the one thing? What we're talking about is using leverage. Leverage to me is a game-changing concept. So stick with me here for a second. But in physics, leverage is the application of just a small amount of force to achieve a much larger effect through the use of a physical lever against a fulcrum point. Now, what that does is it creates mechanical advantage where just a small amount of input force can move an incredibly heavy object. It's like, have you ever used a hammer to pull out a nail before? If you have, you've used leverage. So imagine trying to pull out that same nail with your fingers. It's not going to happen. Leverage is key to being able to do superhuman acts. Okay. And they're simple things. In productivity and with recruiting, leverage means nearly the exact same thing. It's just maximizing your outcomes while minimizing your input effort so that you can conduct feats of productivity magic. Instead of using a physical lever, we're not using hammers, right? And a physical fulcrum to move against the object. And what I'm going to show you is how to use tools, techniques, and technology to amplify that effect that you're having, right? So, right, when I say this works, I mean, this is a picture of a man lifting a car off the ground using leverage. Okay. What ends up making the biggest difference is where you place your fulcrum point. So you move it the right way and you increase your leverage, things get easier for you. You move it the wrong way and you decrease leverage and things get so much harder. That's why we call this your leverage point because it's where you place it. It's super important in productivity and with your recruiting goals, your target is your leverage point. Like me, the example that I just used, getting a commitment on or shortly after the visit. It was a different leverage point and it made all the difference in the world for me, right? It changed where I put my focus. I had just like you, I have a limited amount of time and resources, and I wanted to get the maximum output, the maximum impact in the limited amount of time and resources and focus that I could put towards recruiting. So we got to start with a different fulcrum for you, right? Choose the right goal or target. I'm telling you, things can get easier. Choose the wrong one, and it just gets harder. It's going to take longer. It's going to take more work to get done the same thing if you just had a different fulcrum. So I'm just trying to get you to think differently. Okay. I mean, I imagine you know what I'm talking about. We've all had that experience of working incredibly hard and just not having much to show for it. That's low leverage, but you also probably know what it feels like to put in a little bit of effort and get a huge positive outcome. That's high leverage. Okay. And the problem is as coaches, you've got so many things you're doing and so many goals and a lot of projects, and you want to tackle all of them, especially during the year, right? Obviously, there's some things that are more important than others in season versus out of season. And I want to suggest to you that if you really pay attention, there's going to be different levels of embedded leverage, or even think about the recruiting tasks that you are implementing to try to accomplish your recruiting goals. If you look, they all have different levels of leverage, meaning each of them has different payoffs. Some of them are going to have bigger payoffs with less effort, and some will have lesser payoffs, but require a lot more effort. Look at your to-do list, right? You'll see not all tasks on your to-do list are created equal. Some have bigger payoffs with less effort. Like I said, some have lesser payoffs and have a lot more effort. What I'm hoping to do is you recognize, some of these tasks that you're choosing to do, which have more leverage. This is the journey that I went on. And when I started asking myself, what is the one thing I can do to make all of this go easier? When I just took a step back and asked myself that question before I dove into the day and just worked hard all day, I started planning more. And as I planned and really kept in mind which tasks are going to give me more leverage, which ones are going to give me less leverage, but take more work, it changed my to-do list and it helped me get to where I want to go faster. That's what I love about this visual is it shows you clearly that you can tackle bigger goals or different tasks, like I've said, and get more done faster when you employ leverage. And this is where the kind of year where you're focused on goals, where you're on the right side of this graphic, is the kind of year where you can look back and you can't believe how much progress you've made. But you got to change what you're focused on and change your leverage points. Okay. The opposite is true, right? Where when you choose a goal that doesn't employ leverage, you're just not going to get as much done. You're going to be spinning your wheels. You're going to be working really hard. Your progress is going to be slow. And it's going to feel like a crawl to your recruiting goals. And you're never going to reach your potential as a recruiter because you're just investing more of your efforts into something that just is giving you much lower payoffs. Okay. Now, all of us are different, right? Even on this webinar, those that showed up to the webinar and registered for it, I mean, we've got junior college up to Power Four, all sports, all divisions. Your fulcrum point, your goals, your leverage is going to be different and unique to each of you and your circumstances. It's going to be unique to your opportunity, your resources, the challenges you face, the talents you have, the resources you have at your disposal. It's based on all of that, right? But the secret, again, to me, and hopefully I'm not beating a dead horse here, is that I can honestly say that this was the secret to my success later in my career. Gosh, I wish I would have learned this much earlier as a recruiter. Was when I started to exclusively put my efforts towards goals and tasks that had a ton of leverage working in my favor. And even though, right, emotionally, there were urgent things that I felt like I should have been working on, or things that I'd just been doing forever, or, seeing other people do things. I'm like, I should be doing what they're doing. Nope. I got to my goals faster with less effort by identifying what these key actions that had leverage were. Uh, it just made it easier, right? And it's really the difference between crawling to your goals, walking to your goals, running to your goals, maybe riding a bike to your goals, or riding a supercharged motorcycle. I think we all can agree we want to ride that supercharged motorcycle, right? These decisions that I made, and I had to make choices. But when I made these decisions, it changed the game for me with recruiting. I decided to stop forcing my way through recruiting and all the things that I had to do. I stopped making emotional decisions. I stopped being in my inbox so much. I stopped trying to do everything all at once. I decided to focus all my efforts on the goal with the most leverage, and everything transformed. It really did. Because in that moment, I moved away from effort and efficiency and towards effectiveness. Okay. And my hope is I can help you do the same. So the thing that we're doing to give you one more analogy is this is like the slingshot effect. Okay. Imagine throwing a rock with just your hand versus using a slingshot. Obviously, what goes faster? Okay. I help coaches through Busy Coach build momentum faster and move 10 times faster than they ever have been by using something like this slingshot effect. And it's the leverage, applying leverage. You pull back that slingshot. I know a lot of people when I first start working with, they're like, oh, maybe I don't want to plan, or always I'm getting pulled off because of all these other things that come up. But I want you to think, planning your week might feel like slowing down because you're pausing and you're thinking, you're setting priorities. But that little bit of tension, that pause, is when you let go of that thing, and it's going to launch you forward so much faster than everybody else. When you skip planning and you just wing it, you don't take that pause. It's like you're throwing rocks by hand. It's going to be slow. It's going to be messy. You don't get there as faster. It takes more work and it's exhausting, right? But when you plan first, you're turning your weeks, your days, your months into a slingshot. We're going to aim, we're going to fire, and we're going to fly. That's what I want for you. Okay. Effectiveness first, efficiency second. Not going to have to put as much effort to get to the goal. Okay. So here's some examples of things that I specifically did. At the start of the season, started with a goal. But with that goal, I needed to figure out how much time do I have, and then what needs to happen, right? What are all of the key things I need to do? I just usually had 3, 4 months to get the kid from start to finish. When am I getting them to visit? Well, how many phone calls am I doing? How many emails am I doing? I figured ballpark in advance. I figured all that stuff out and I mapped it out. Okay. Planning, leverage, right? Slingshot effect. Planned it in advance. And then what I did is I put it on, some of you might have heard me talk about this battle board. One visual board. It wasn't working out of the top of my head. It wasn't in my phone. It wasn't on a post-it note somewhere. This was a big ass board that I had in my office or even at my house that showed me what I need to accomplish. What is the goal? When is the end? And I worked my way backwards. I put everything in there, right? And I looked at this thing every single freaking day. I still have my battle board. I look at the thing every single day because otherwise I get going in I have so many calls and so many things that I have going on that if I didn't keep looking at my goals, I would get pulled off track. And when I started doing this as a recruiter, right, I don't want you going in the wrong direction, right? This thing, when I committed to looking at this thing every single day, it eliminated a lot of distractions for me. It eliminated my to-do list because there were things on my to-do list that kept getting on there that didn't need to be on there because they weren't going to help me get towards my goals. This helped me eliminate a lot of things, which freed up a lot of time, right? From doing dumb stuff. This helped me delegate to my assistants better. This helped just keep me on track, keep me focused, and kept me accountable to what I said I was going to do, right? We had all of the tasks in one place. Okay. How much time do you waste? I was wasting so much time looking for things or trying to remember what the next thing was. This was one time putting it together that everybody could see what needed to get done throughout the course of the year so we didn't forget things. We started to be able to proactively get out ahead of things. Assistants started not guessing, Coach, what do you need me to do today? Nope, it was all on this list. Okay, and then we also had all of our operating procedures attached to it. So there was no more wasting time wondering what to do or how to do something or who to call or when to do. Everything was all in the one place. Solved a lot of problems for us. We then had to really, and this is at the beginning of the season, if this is the goal, get a commitment on the visit. What are the critical actions we need to be doing that are going to help us get closer to our goals? Not all tasks are created equal. What are the critical ones? I decided that. Again, it helped me eliminate a lot of things. It helped me focus on being effective first instead of just putting in a lot of blind effort and just winging it. What are the key things for you in your situation? And we decided three, at least three that we needed to do. We had to be intentional about the three that we were doing. And here are just a few of the ones that I did. I'm not going to go through these right now, but if you want to set up a call and talk about each of these things, but these are things we did on a consistent basis for the most part. And not everybody did all of them. It was just based on the role and what they were responsible for doing. We decided that what are the three things that we can be doing every single day. But that was just big picture stuff. Every month, this was the rhythm that I got into. I looked at this, right? I had to keep the main thing, the main thing. I looked at this every month. I pulled out the master list. This month, what are the outcomes we need? And then what tasks are associated with that outcome? And then who's responsible for what? Planned ahead. This wasn't an on the day, let's figure out what to do. Nope. 1 hour meeting at the beginning of the month was the rhythm we got into. That rhythm just became more automatic. And each month that we did it, we got smoother and faster with each of the things. Uh, what are the critical actions? But then also we put outcomes associated to it. These are objective things. So I have a coach. So for example, I have a coach who was like, we're going to start reaching out through Instagram and I'm going to have my assistants reach out to 100 new people on Instagram every single day. Mandy, is that a good goal? No, it's not, because you could reach out to 100 kids on Instagram, but if zero respond, right, that's not good. I want you to establish a goal based on, 10 recruits communicating with us via Instagram. That's a better number to track because it might take 1,000 kids. We got to reach out to 1,000 kids to get 10 respond. But that, like the response in the communication back and forth, because there's no recruiting if there's no communication, right? We got to establish that. So that's a better number to hit, but it's objective. We either do it or we don't do it, right? And if you hit the goal, awesome. Rinse and repeat the next month. If we don't hit the 10 recruits communicating with us via Instagram, then we got to change the process, right? Maybe we change the message, maybe we change the timing, maybe we change the follow-up, maybe we change something, but something in the process wasn't working. I'm a big believer in you have a system for how you're doing things, and that system is set up perfectly for the results you're getting. If you're not getting the ideal result, we got to change something in the process, right? So, you know what I'm saying? So we established the number to hit. So it was objective, and we knew if the goal was hit or not. And if it wasn't hit, we got to keep working until it was hit. That was key. It was so huge. Oh, it was simple, but man, it was huge. One thing we did every month, not all recruits have the same impact, right, on your program. Some are going to be more, obviously talented. Some are more athletic. Some are faster. Some are just further along in the process than others, right? I was making the mistake, and it was taking me a long time to finish my recruiting because I was treating everybody the same. When I realized I can't keep treating everybody the same because Don't you find like the average kids that maybe aren't getting recruited by as many coaches, don't they blow up your inbox every time you send them something? And once I realized I was living in my inbox, I was spending way too much time there, I decided one of the things we can do that's a leveraged activity for us is we can focus and spend more time on all of our best communication with the top kids. Because if I can focus on the top kids first, and then eventually I'll get to that group, but not only after the top kids get what I need them to send. So they're feeling the love and I'm moving them along in the process. But the top kids, I decided what is the rhythm that I can get into? What can I create for that group that's going to help keep us in the game with these other schools we're competing against? But then I still need to contact these other kids. So I just sent them half as much stuff, right? So I didn't text them, I didn't call them, I didn't, we just sent them half as much stuff. But because I had half as much going out to this group, my inbox was much more empty, right? And it allowed me more time to focus on the top kids. Simple thing, made all the difference in the world, right? Uh, I committed to, it wasn't random. I found one of the things that really helped increase my response rate. One thing did a lot of things, and that was one thing of committing to when I'm going to communicate with recruits had a multiplier effect on a lot of things. My responses went up. I had better communication with the kids. They understood what the recruiting process was going to be, so I got them moving along a lot faster. And it was just one decision I made, and then I kept to it. I had to create things in advance. We did things once a month where it was we picked a topic and then we figured out based on what we had committed to for the top kids and how often we were going to contact them and how we were going to contact them. We created the content. All of this happened in one meeting at the beginning of the month. I know it sounds maybe like a lot, but it was one meeting at the beginning of the month. It took us like an hour. Maybe at the first couple times it took a couple hours, but eventually, but that one meeting planned out and got all of this stuff created and then scheduled, automated for the rest of the month solved a lot of our inconsistency issues. It increased our communication. It was less showing up on the day, being random and trying to figure out what we're going to talk to the recruit about. So it kept us more in control of the recruiting process and it just kept things moving along. One thing solved a lot of other things, right? And then we created templates. Okay. We didn't just do it once and send, individual things to every single kid. We created a more impactful template. So I used to send this as my first contact message. I got about a 10% response rate to that. I mean, imagine. So I'll just say recruiting strategy. If you're sending a message like this through email, send it to yourself first. If you wouldn't even read your own email because there's too much stuff written, there's no way a teenager is reading it, right? But you could. I just through tracking numbers I became a Dan Tudor client and I had him creating a lot of my templates for me based on his research, which is a game changer. If you're not a client, you should do that. But it was just templates. This was something I was going to reuse over and over and over again, year after year after year, created it really well once and kept tweaking it until I got a good response. But then once I got that good response, I just went with it. So it wasn't, again, it saved me a lot of time. It was figure out what works and then just double down on that, save it, repurpose it over all the recruits and many years, right? It saved me a lot of time and it increased our results. And then month by month, it was again, what was the outcome we needed and what are the questions I need to ask? The quality of kid you get and the speed that recruiting goes depends on the quality of questions you ask. This figuring out and spending time on finding the best questions we could ask, what we said and how we said it determined how a recruit responded. And when we got better and new information, because we just spent a little time up front figuring out what are the questions we need to ask, recruiting went so much faster. We got them to open up. We got them to share new, more impactful, what they value, what's important to them, how are they going to make decisions, things that might get us eliminated. We mapped it out. We didn't just wing it. We didn't just show up on calls and hoped, a great conversation happened. We planned it out. And again, 1 hour meeting, beginning of the month. And it made things go so much faster. Then all we had to do, we planned it, we just had to execute. Okay. Weekly, most coaches show up with a blank calendar and just are going to fit recruiting in a little bit here, a little bit there. Never found that worked really well for me, right? Random actions led to random results, and random results aren't good for us. So I started to put a week calendar. This started to be a rhythm. And every week is going to be different, right? So you got to do it every single week. You can't just think you're going to do it once and, it's set. Nope. Coaching, right? You got athletes, you got meetings, you got games, you got practices, things change, right? So every Sunday before the week, what does my week look like? When am I traveling? When do I have meetings? When do I have practice? All the things. And I would block that off. And then I would look on my calendar and find the most open time that made sense for me to focus on recruiting. Recruiting, I will imagine all you guys would agree that the length and the success of your career depends on your ability to recruit. And a lot of times coaches don't become great at recruiting because we're just not spending enough time on it because we're not blocking it off. Okay. Going back to the question of what's one thing that I could do that we're going to make all of this easier. Okay. You have to find time to recruit. I found when I asked myself that question, it was such a simple answer. I wouldn't have come to the answer had I not asked myself that question. I figured out for me, Mondays was not a good day for me to recruit because I was busy, thinking, okay, over the weekend, we got games, I got to watch video, I got to do all the administrative junk, I got to do all the things. So anytime I tried to recruit on Mondays, I worked harder and longer trying to figure everything out. And the quality wasn't good. So it didn't make sense for me to keep doing recruiting on Mondays. What I did was I decided Mondays is going to be purely administrative. I'm going to get all the random things done. But then I blocked off a big chunk of time Tuesday mornings at a different location. That one decision and that action, I saved up all of my recruiting stuff. It was earlier in the week, so I could have more of the work week to actually get recruiting done. And then, so I didn't have to do as much stuff on the weekends, was key. But I also found because it was the same day, same time, I got into a rhythm with it. I did it in the morning because my energy was better, my focus was better. I had fewer interruptions in the morning, and I did it at a different location because I found when I did it in the office, I always started, whenever I got bored or tired and took a break, I would go out and start getting stuck in stupid things, and then I would never get back to it, right? So I forced myself to work in a different location. The environment, use leverage. My energy was leverage. I got more done strategically matching when my energy was good and when my interruptions were the fewest. I got more done in that one day than most coaches get done in a whole week recruiting. And I got more progress because I started with my priorities and then I worked my way down. Simple decisions I had to make, but made it so simple. And then at the end of the week, right? Just like with coaching, why do we watch game film? We're trying to see. We can put a plan in place. Are we executing on the plan? At the end of the week, review what worked, what didn't work, what did we do well, what did we didn't do well. And you could, if you have a staff, it's a simple accountability meeting, 15 minutes on Friday. What did we accomplish? What made the biggest impact? So we can repeat again, go a mile wide, an inch deep, not a mile, or a mile. What I'm totally screwing that up. A mile deep, an inch wide versus a mile wide, an inch deep, right? Bigger impact. What are the key? If we're going to keep focusing on effectiveness, we got to keep impact. And then what adjustments? One meeting, 15 minutes can make all the difference in the world, right? So we're not making the same mistakes over and over again. We're fixing, we're correcting, we're improving. That's how you get to be great, right? You know this with your teams, but we're not doing it with recruiting daily. I think a lot of coaches start the day and they get punched in the face. And a lot of it has to do with their athletes. I get that. But a lot of it is self-inflicted wounds. I wanted to throw the first punch. I want you to throw the first punch. Every morning, you have a choice to react to the chaos or hit first with your priority. This is not about being busy all the time. This is about trying to get your win on the board before the rest of the coaches you're competing with even wake up or while they're still processing email in their inboxes, right? To me, the first punch is the momentum that you can start, right? Which is, to me, is the first win of the day. And that's how the days and weeks, honestly, the years, months, years, this is how you can, when you throw the first punch, you're choosing your wins and you're building momentum, right? And this is what I want you to do. I mean, I want you to think about, I mean, it's a ritual, it's a rhythm you get yourself into. All of these top athletes have a rhythm or a routine or superstition, right, that they followed that helped them get into a rhythm and get into a flow. What is yours? So remember I said effectiveness and then efficiency. Efficiency, do you have morning when you wake up, when you first start work, when you are winding down work, when you're finishing work, right? What are some of the things you have set in place? You do these things every single day. Have you optimized these things? Okay. But just something to think about, right? Is again, as we're talking about effectiveness and efficiency, what are some of these things that you could start establishing, or where are the problems? I always think problems. That's a good sign that the system isn't working as well as it's set up, right? What are some of these things you could put in place? Mine, battle board. What are my goals? Critical action results list versus a to-do list. And I established that the night before. I wanted to go to bed with a plan and I wanted to wake up with a purpose. That simple change leveraged my activities. It stopped, again, one thing that did a lot of things. Critical actions, effectiveness started with my priorities. I decided it the night before, started with them, and I didn't move to the next group until the first group was worked on, right? I made the decision. I even set out some of the emails and some of the things if I was going to be emailing the next day, but movement and progress, right? A lot of coaches I find when you have an hour to maybe fit in recruiting, most coaches, we start on email, we work our way, start at the top, work our way down. That is not a leveraged activity because email doesn't come in priority order, right? But starting with, if I've got 1 hour, plan it ahead of time, know who your top recruits are, what stage of the recruiting process they are, and what's the next thing I need them to do, right? Different mindset, different actions, same hour, massively different result, you know, different things. With recruiting, we got to get movement. We got to create movement with the top kids. I forgot I would forget about kids. And this is where if they were in the database, I totally forgot about them. So I had to, the top kids, they were listed out. They were on a sheet of paper. They were always by my desk, and I kept track of, I didn't necessarily need to keep track of when I contacted them because my rhythm was the same. And that one decision, it solved so many other things for me. I kept track of when they responded to me. So I could start seeing where I was maybe losing kids, where I was, how quickly they responded to certain things versus others. I had pictures of them up in her office. So every time they walked in, I could see them. It was behind a closed door, right? So if I had recruits there on visits, they couldn't see who was on the list. But just seeing them every day kept me focused and kept me on thinking, okay, you know what? I haven't heard from that kid in a minute. I got to reach back out. Helped me be better at recruiting. I also, one of the things I loved, and it takes work, but it was a leveraged activity because this became my scoreboard. This started to help me feel more in control of my recruiting because I could start to see who I was winning with and who I was losing with. This helped me keep focus on next action. What is the next thing I need this potential student athlete to do to get them moving along in the process? As kids were, responding to me, that each little action I got them to take was a win for me, right? And the ones that I was winning the most with, they rose to the top. I knew I could ask for a commitment from that kid faster because all these little actions that I got them to do were wins. And the more wins I got, to me, increased the probability of getting the big win. So I asked those kids to commit and I got them to commit faster because I could see through their actions. Don't judge a recruit based on what they say. Judge based on their actions, but track it. It's a leveraged activity. You're going to get more from it. It's work, but it's going to help you realize who you're winning with faster and who you're losing with, right? So one of the things that I found as a friction point was I would have the best intentions with a plan and show up and start to work on all my things and trying to get into a flow and a rhythm. And then somebody would stop in and I'm like, oh gosh, this sucks. So I started to get into a rhythm of one priority first, ideally, before I even leave the house, get that done. First, get into the office, battle board. Second, try to tackle another sprint, another priority. Then I would open my inbox and go through my inbox quickly as best I could. And then we had a huddle with the staff. Try to be 5 minutes. We were standing up, not sitting down, so we could not get distracted and comfy and start talking about a million other things. But it was priorities, metrics we're trying to hit, and potential problems. Let's get that all out in the open because now, as a head coach, I could see and make sure that my assistants were doing what they needed to be doing, that they were focused on the critical actions and that it was on their brain. They knew what they should be doing as well. Most, again, we drift and we're not sure. We know there's a lot to do, but we're just not sure the number one things to do. I wanted to make a commitment to it every day and I wanted it to be public so everybody knew what you're working on, right? Daily. That was super helpful. And then again, one, the strategy of leveraged magic time, picking the day and the time during the week when you're going to get 10 times more things done because your energy is great and your focus is great and you're getting the fewest interruptions, but we're aligning high value tasks, critical tasks with that energy. Okay, that's how you can leverage your time. You can get more done in 1 hour during your magic time than you could if you were randomly doing things all throughout the rest of the day, right? Strategic and very intentional about what we were doing. The last few things I'll share here, template, automation. Again, you're sending so many emails. I want you to start thinking if you're showing up thinking effectiveness first, but then we got to be efficient with all the repeat tasks that you have to do. What part of this might you use again? Save it as a template. Here are some ideas. How many questions do you get asked over and over again? Are they the same questions, right? Create a frequently asked questions folder. Now that one folder, it's work up front to put together, but now you don't have to recreate from scratch the same answer to the same questions that you've asked all over, every time. Create the answer really well once. And then, so now the quality is going to go up. The speed that it takes to respond to the recruit goes down significantly. Now you can have your assistants, you're actually training your assistants on how you would answer the question. You can make sure from a quality perspective, you're answering the question the right way, but now your assistant can start taking over some of your emails, maybe to your recruits, because they know what to say because you've already said it and you've already put it in a folder, right? One thing that does a lot of things. You know what I'm saying? But there's different template ideas, process, right? So I always say, process is it's a checklist. It's like the Lego instruction manual, which I totally geek out on. I love that my kids can start with a bunch of random pieces and just follow step by step through the instructions and it looks like what it should look like on the picture on the way, on the back end of it. But these are some of the things that you are repeat tasks that you're doing year after year. Write it out, put it in your master to-do list, right? You could even record a video of going through the process, but write it out. What are the steps? Who are the people to contact? What are the phone numbers? What are the emails? What order do things need to be? Again, are these work upfront? 100%. But when you do it once, you write everything out. Now, anybody could come in off the street, and as long as they can follow the checklist and everything is accurate, they could set up an official visit for you in 30 minutes, right? Or a lot less time. Instead of randomly figuring things out or just going things, trying to figure out things as you go, you waste time looking for documents. You don't remember the next step. So there's going to be mistakes. It's just going to take longer, smoother, faster, right? These are repeat tasks that you do, smoother, faster. That's a goal, right? And then technology, right? So you got to automate yourself. There's certain things you can do to become a better recruiter through self-automation. There's a lot of templates you could create and reuse over and over again. There's tons of processes that you're doing every single year, but also how do we automate technology? Like I used to, with my top recruits that I was trying to prioritize, I figured out how to automate uh, and pin them to the top of my email. So those kids came in at a different color and they stayed at the top of my email. It made it easier for me. Like I said, we created a month's worth of emails, or Dan Tudor created a bunch of emails that we could send, and we just scheduled them to go out, automated, easy. One time, sent it to everybody. Don't need to worry about it anymore. I used to try to get, I was used to get overwhelmed by all the email in my inbox. So I would put it in, I set up an email auto thing where it went right to a folder. Didn't even see them, right? So technology, there's so many different things with technology that you can do to make things faster, and especially with AI. But as I wrap this up, I know this is going much longer than I said it was going to, but I want you to have this information. Winning is simple. You just got to wake up and do the things that everybody else avoids. You certainly could try to play the game everybody else is playing by grinding longer and harder than everybody else. I say no to that. I think you win and you become great at recruiting by thinking smarter, planning sharper, by doing less, but by doing what you choose to do better. So 1 hour of planning is going to save you 3 hours of chaos, improve the quality, like eliminate mistakes, get more people involved. Like there's so many things. And it's not laziness. At first, I thought it was being lazy, but it's leverage is what it is. So every minute you spend thinking ahead isn't wasted. These are hours, days, weeks that you're going to get back to actually focus on what matters for you. And that could be just spending more time with your team. That could be spending more time with your family. Okay. You got to make choices. I love this quote by Nick Saban. If you want to be good, you really don't have a lot of choices because it takes what it takes, right? I know the saying, quitters never win, but I actually think that quitters win when they quit the right things. Smart coaches quit all the time. And the difference is they're quitting the right things. Winning at recruiting isn't about doing more. It's about cutting and cutting ruthlessly, cutting your low value work, cutting your distractions, cutting out perfectionism. Quit what drains your energy without guilt. Say no. Every no you say today protects a bigger win and a yes for tomorrow. Okay. Winning your day by day with recruiting isn't about cramming more in. It's about cutting away everything that's not going to lead to a win. Okay. We got to eliminate bad habits that move, eliminating bad habits. Actually, you can move the needle further and faster than adding anything new. But I want you to think, be a gladiator with your planning. It's not about being perfect, it's about being ready for the fight. Some people treat their day like a robot script. If something goes wrong, it's like, right? I think high performing coaches who are great recruiters are like gladiators. They expect chaos, but they're still going to win. Your plan isn't fragile. It's armor. It's your sword. Planning is your sword. It's what lets you adapt and keep moving and keep winning no matter what the week throws at you. Okay. We don't plan to try to make life perfect or control the things you can't control. We plan because the planning makes us unstoppable and flexible, right? So plan like a gladiator and expect the hits, but you're going to keep on swinging. And what we're doing is we're looking for the winning streak effect. Okay, one win, 1 day of planning feels good, but you can't expect that 1 day is gonna, you're gonna be a great recruiter with just 1 day. You got to keep coming back, right? And you're creating momentum. Momentum isn't magic. It's just wins, stacked upon wins, stacked upon wins. 1 day planned, and then another, and then another. And pretty soon you're not pushing anymore. The flywheel is pulling you. I think a lot of coaches lose momentum and they never gain it because they're just waiting for momentum to show up. But I think coaches that are great at recruiting do the opposite. They're taking action, they're creating momentum, they're stacking tiny wins day after day until the motivation really appears. They don't just set one big goal. I want you to set tiny daily wins. Create unstoppable momentum by tiny little wins. Okay. Last thing, treat recruiting like a game, not a grind, right? Because when you play a game, it just doesn't crush you. Failure doesn't crush you. I think it challenges you. You level up, you keep going, you have fun. That's the mindset you got to bring to every single game because recruiting is hard, right? Coaching is hard and it's not some boring checklist. It's a board game. Okay. Treat it as a game, and every task you finish that helps you get closer to your goals is a point you score. Every win stacks, builds your momentum, right? Every day as a coach is a new challenge, and you get it to rack up, you get to choose to rack up the small wins to add up to massive success, or you can get lost in the grind and the chaos. Okay. Hopefully you saw and you got from this, and just if anything, it got you thinking differently, right? Is again, recruiting is hard, coaching is hard, but there are things you can do to make your job easier, not harder. And you got to use leverage. You got to think differently. You got to plan smarter, and then you got to you got to work the plan. I am here if you want to ever have these conversations and talk specifically about your program and what you could do to maybe fix to get yourself into a better rhythm of using leverage or using, any sort of automations. I'm here. Certainly busy.coach is my website if you want to take a look at that. But I work with coaches one-on-one through Busy Coach. I've got different programs through Busy Coach, but I also work with a lot of clients with Dan Tudor and, as his VP of managing all those clients and doing all those things that I do for Dan. So anything that I can do to help, please let me know.